Hey, what's up, everyone? This is Jeremy, founder of QuickMail.io.
And this is Jack from Emails That Sell.
Episode 19, The Fox and a Crow. And in this episode, you'll learn what a 300-year-old story can teach you about writing effective cold email, real-life examples of how to apply these copywriting tricks to any cold email sequence, and how this rule will help you easily build a hot list of prospects. Do you want to tell us what it's all about, Jack?
Actually, The Fox and the Crow is a story that Jeremy told me. So the gist of it, actually, Jeremy, I think you're the best one to tell this story. I mean, you know it much better than me.
It always stuck with me. This is a story of a crow who has a big piece of cheese in a beak. And the fox is down on the ground while the crow is in a tree. And the fox would like the cheese, but the fox is clever, and he knows that if he goes after the cheese, he's never going to get it. So instead, he goes for the crow. So he compliments the crow on his beautiful feathers, and he says, if your voice is as lovely as your feathers, then you're obviously the king of the forest. And the crow, with so much pride, just want to show the fox how beautiful his voice is, and he just opened his mouth really large, and the cheese falls. And obviously, it falls in the mouth of the fox, who then eats the cheese and go away.
So, Jeremy, I love that story. What does it have to do with cold email?
Well, we've been preparing a next episode based on really exceptional reply rates. And here we're talking about, 50 plus reply rates at the minimum. And we came to the realization that they were all using this one way or another. They were like complimenting people on whatever it is, on their background, how exceptional their background is, how great their blog article was, and things like that.
Can we say that if you can include some sincere compliment in a cold email, you're probably going to see a lift in replies?
I think it's fair to say, and the opposite is also true. So as a side note, I've seen some campaign performing terribly, and very often they're like trying to fault the recipient into something, whether, they have a bug on their website, or, their page doesn't load, or they are not mobile friendly, whatever kind of thing. And faulting people usually leads to really bad reply rate.
Right, especially if you're targeting employees at a company. You can't go to your higher up with an email that says, I'm doing a bad job. No, you're just going to trash it. In fact, that's happened to me where, I was talking to a marketing director about cold email, and they said, "Oh, actually, we have someone in-house who does this. I'll forward him to. I'll put you guys in contact." And what ended up happening was I was basically just trying to find out how they were doing cold email, and I shared a few tips. But at the end of the day, he was never going to share this. It was like, okay, cool, but if this leaks out that there's things that I should have been doing, I'm going to look bad. So it went nowhere. And that's the idea here. It's like complimenting goes way farther than criticizing. I think it's all about getting specific. So instead of saying, I admire your work history, which
Absolutely.
can apply to everyone on the planet, instead zoom in on their 7 years of Python programming experience for, whatever
or Ruby
company.
on Rails. Yes.
Yeah, or Ruby or Python, either one. So getting specific does two things. One, it's going to help with list building, because you don't want to build a list of just anybody. So if you were very specific, let's build a list of people who have more than 5 years of, programming experience, then you've got a natural talking point there with everyone in your list. So you can say they've made the cut because they've got the experience. So naturally, everybody is worthy of the praise. I admire your programming background, and you can use that to start the conversation.
So Jack, can you give us some example of how to compliment someone, on a cold email? So we mentioned looking at their work history, maybe on LinkedIn, and and then using that. And the
Right.
great thing about this is it could be used, like you say, in list building. I could instruct my VA to only scrape certain profile on LinkedIn that have certain skills, and then just use that in my copy.
Exactly.
But what kind of thing can I compliment people on?
A recent blog article, especially if it's been shared quite a bit. So you could use something like BuzzSumo to find the most popular piece of content from a given domain. So you can just easily drop in the URL and the title of the post, or probably even better, grab one of the 7 tips in that post and say like, hey, I loved, your piece of advice on subject lines on that article you did for, Forbes. Another thing you can do is anything that's shared on social media is fair game to grab and mention in an email. And I mention this because there are some things that are off limits. So you actually don't want to be too picky. You don't want to be too sneaky about the information that you've gathered on this prospect. So, as an example, I know that I had run a campaign a while ago that talked about a person who had formerly worked for them and is now working for another company. I got plenty of, okay, that's creepy. Like, I don't know how you know that, but like, that's creepy, man. Like, get out of here. And the moral of the story is like, obviously don't dig too hard for what you're about to compliment on them. Could be a number of years in business. If you're contacting founders, it's a big deal to reach certain milestones. So if they've been in business for 10 years, especially if it's coming up on the anniversary of that company, or if they've put out their 100th blog post or their 100th podcast episode, that shows that you've done a bit of homework and can naturally start the conversation off on a good note. Yelp reviews, or Foursquare reviews. That goes a lot farther than just coming off as a completely cold, hey, my name is XYZ and I work for it.
In fact, you just give me an idea. How about like generating your lists of, look at reviews, look at the shortest review possible and the highest number of stars. So that way you can even include it into your email and say, I especially love this one. And then it's like a 2-liner. Yeah. That should be nice. The other interesting thing I want to point here is like when you compliment someone, you're making an emotional deposit in their sort of like emotional bank account. You then activate by default the reciprocity rule, which means that now you can go with a small ask, right? So as long as your ask is not as much as the benefit you give them
if the credit of your ask is less than the debit that you've gotten from your
then you got the great reply. Yeah, absolutely.
There you go. You can think about starting a campaign with a compliment and then a really easy ask. So maybe just grabbing some feedback or finding out what they're working on right now and letting that conversation move towards, maybe something a little bit higher in terms of commitment level. And from there, I mean, once that conversation started, the relationship building begins and, it could lead to something much greater down the road. At the end of the day, it's really thinking about what's in it for your email recipient. And if you have that mentality, you're going to be better than, 99% of cold emailers out there. Okay, so today we learned that finding a genuine compliment for your prospects is a lot easier than you might think because we're putting things that we're proud of online. Second, being critical puts people on the defensive. So start your cold email out with a compliment, and that's going to allow you to benefit from the rule of reciprocity. Finally, using compliments to filter people on your list is going to help you build a hot list of prospects.